Hello, my friends. I love Bros, but we want the werewolf story. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. My little brother Jason and I used to love playing in the basement. There's a very concrete reason for why we are both scared of it, but for vastly different reasons. It's hard to explain. Here's the thing. One night a few weeks ago, Jason and I were playing pool in the basement. It came down to the 8 balls, and then we heard a noise. Scratching from that crawl space. Jason and I boarded up because we were so scared of it. The deep, square-shaped patch of darkness always haunted out nightmares. Growing up, we had always dared each other to enter, but neither of us found the courage. The scratching grew louder, to the point Jason covered his ears, and I winced. "What the hell is that sound?" I asked, growing more irritated by the second. The boards began to rattle, so Jason and I gave each other a look of sheer terror and fled up the stairs. Then the strangest thing happened. As soon as we got up the stairs and closed the door, Jason turned to me. He had a blank expression on his face. "So are we going to play some pool?" Jason just stared at me, confused and irritated. I just told him I was feeling tired, maybe we'd play later if I was feeling up to it. I'm several years older than Jason. It didn't make sense for me to tell my parents that we heard rattling down there, especially if my younger brother didn't back me up. I'd really look crazy then. A few days went by without me going down to the basement to play pool. My parents wondered what was wrong. I just told them that I was maybe coming down with something and didn't feel like doing much. "Come on, Liam. You know how much your brother loves the pool. How about one game?" My dad pressed, using one of his trademark warm smiles to manipulate me. I agreed, and my muscles tensed with every step. Jason and I got about halfway through when we heard the rattling sound and saw the boards shake. Jason and I both screamed and ran up the steps. Same thing as before. Dad asked Jason what had happened down there, and Jason just shook his head. "Nothing, Daddy," he said. "Actually, I don't remember anything." Dad and Mom gave me a suspicious glare. It wasn't until the following day that shit really hit the fan. "Look, son, I know you're at that precarious age where maybe you haven't developed your moral center yet. But your mother and I were wondering whether or not you're messing with your brother down there in the basement." "What? What do you mean, like abusing him? What the fuck? You know I would never do that." I was really pissed off my dad would even suggest such a thing. "Oh. Hold on, kiddo. I never said abuse. I said messing with brother always fuck with each other. Fact of life. We just want to make sure nothing is going on down there that might scar him long term." Scar his long term sounded like language my mum would use. I told my dad, emphatically, that no, I would never deliberately terrify Jason. I blew out a long sigh and told him what I had seen down there. I said I hesitated to tell him because he might think I was crazy. "You should have said something, son. Let's check it out right now." So we did. I went down to the basement and my dad stared at the boards blocking access to the crawl space for some time. Dad noticed one of them had come a little loose. "You're saying they rattled?" "The boards?" Dad seemed like he was interrogating me. Like he didn't believe me. I started to feel like I was going crazy, that maybe my mind really did make everything up. Well, just as Dad and I were heading up the stairs, we heard it. Rattling. One of the boards flew across the room and banged against the wall. So Dad ran to the wall, and usually, I don't think he does stupid things, but hell, he stuck his arm right in there. He fished around for a minute, then when my heartbeat began to slow down, he looked like his arm got completely sucked into the hole. Dad screamed, and I went over to him, pulling with all my strength until he collapsed onto the floor, arm bloody and shaking. The rest of the day was miserable. Dad had to go to the hospital. Jason and Mom went hysterical. I could tell they were both suspicious of me. I described what had happened, but I knew by their facial expressions that they didn't believe me. The cops were called to investigate the crawl space. They didn't find much inside it except for a couple of rusty nails attached to a few discarded boards. They attributed the deep, ghastly scratches on Dad's arm to that. If you heard rattling, we're thinking maybe a raccoon got in or something, one of the cops said, scratching the back of his neck. I could tell they were all as perplexed as I was. When Dad finally came home a week later, both he and Mom decided to block access to the basement. Honestly, son, we don't know if you're telling the truth or not. I guess you must be, to the extent that no one else remembers what happens down there. Except you, apparently. We're going to board up the basement door. We don't want anyone going down there, even you, Dad said, looking angry and disappointed. I knew that my parents were confused and hurt, and honestly, I didn't know what to tell them. Even though the basement door was boarded up, and everything seemed to quiet down, I just couldn't let the situation go. One night, when I knew that everyone had been asleep for a while, I snuck out of the house and went to one of the basement windows. I was shivering because I didn't want the noise of me taking my coat from the rack waking everyone up. The window was unlocked, so I opened it and slid inside, wincing as my belly scraped against a sharp rock. Once my feet found the slick basement floor, I turned around and shone my flashlight in the direction of the large room with the pool table and, more importantly, the crawl space. The cops had boarded it up more thoroughly, to make sure that no more raccoons got through. My flashlight settled on a wolf's face. My hand shook and dropped the flashlight, and I shakily combed the floor with my hand to find it again. I found it and pointed the beam in the direction of the face. I saw the wolf's face again, this time gnawing on what appeared to be a human leg. I sort of yelped, screamed and hurried back through the crawl space. I practically ran back to my bedroom and closed the door, panting and out of breath. Now that I had direct evidence, to my mind, of something supernatural in my basement, I knew there was only one recourse available to me. I called my Uncle Jerry. Uncle Jerry was the black sheep of the family, and I remember him telling me stories of the supernatural. I didn't recall anything about a werewolf, but I decided to call him up on the way to school the next day anyway. If anybody knew, it would be him, he answered, sounding groggy and confused. Jerry was addicted to painkillers. I hadn't talked to him in a while, though I never really forgot the slurred speech and loud tone he claimed was his style. Werewolf in your basement, huh? Better off not telling your folks. They'll think you're nuts. What do I do? Who knows how long it'll stay boarded up down there, I replied. Just relax. Look, that's all there is to it. There's really not much you can do. Silver bullets or weapons can't really hurt a werewolf. That's just fiction. You just gotta make sure the door stays boarded up, and maybe do the same to the windows. Starve it. But I saw it with the leg of a corpse. How the hell? Jerry broke me off. It's getting out through the windows. That's the only possible explanation. Board 'em up. It's your only hope. I had the same problem about 20 years back when I lived out in the country. I had to block off its means of escape and starve the damn thing. I thanked Jerry for his advice and hung up. During the rest of the walk to school, I thought about what Jerry said. It wasn't a bulletproof conclusion that the wolf was getting out through the windows. I found that fairly unlikely since none of them were broken or looked like they had been messed with in any way. Then it clicked. That crawl space probably led somewhere, away from the house. How far, I didn't know. Unless I followed it and discovered the exit point, I'd never be able to trap and starve it. I still haven't been down there since my talk with Jerry. I did board up the windows, to give myself the illusion that I did something. I really don't want to go into that crawl space. As I said, that patch of infinite darkness has always been a source of terror for me and my brother. Now it's only become doubly so ever since I saw what happened to my dad, and my own encounter with the beast that night. Seeing the bloody leg in its long, hairy jaws. I don't think I can do it. I just can't.